So pretzels was a learning experience.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I will say no more.
Yes, they were challenging. End of story.
This is Unpause, a podcast by a family of geeks. Wow.
Yeah.
Hey, Unpausers. Rachel here. I'm the mom and one of the hosts of Unpause. And first of all, I'd like to say it's good to be back. We know it's been a long time since Unpause put out something new, and we're sorry about the few and far between, like far between. Lots of changes have been happening. For one thing, the kids of Unpause are about a foot taller than when we started this podcast. And as you fellow parents might imagine, that means their attentions have shifted about a foot in different directions as well. That also means some of our content into the future might start to change. But that's what family's all about, and Unpause has ever and always been a show for families. Other changes have happened too. Perhaps you've heard of this blip on the radar called a pandemic. Kind of crazy how the entire world has been flipped all together on our heads, and now we're in an era of wearing face masks and keeping safe geographical distances from each other, figuring out which songs we can hum while we wash our hands for 20 seconds. All stuff you've been focused on too. And we hope you're all doing well, being safe, and looking out for each other. Which brings us to today's all-new Unpause podcast episode. And this one might either inspire you to try some new skills or broaden out some hobbies while we're all still in weird times, or you might just get really hungry. Either way, we think you'll enjoy this interview with one of our younger listeners, Elizabeth, and her mom, as we learn about what she's been doing to keep busy during COVID-19. Enjoy. Could I have you say your name and how old you are?
I'm Elizabeth, and I'm 14 years old.
First of all, have you had your last day of school, or are you still in school?
I've had my last educational day of school, but I have some fun activities next week because the last week of school is always like field day activities. So they're having them over Zoom, and I'm going to be a counselor since usually the 8th graders are watching over the younger kids. So that should be a lot of fun.
Oh, well, that sounds really cool. And congrats. So 8th grader, that's big time. That's like right before high school.
Yep.
Now, are you an 8th grader currently, or will you be an 8th grader next year?
I'm currently an 8th grader going into freshman year at high school.
Congratulations. Are you excited?
I am. I'm also a little nervous, though. I've never moved school, so it'll be a new experience to have to go to a new school, meet new people, and all of that.
It's interesting you say that. So my son is also has just wrapped up 8th grade and is going to go to high school, and he's just changing schools. I'm just kind of waiting and seeing like this is going to be a whole new ocean for you, and I'm sure you feel somewhat similarly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll do great though. That's so cool. It sounds exciting that you get to kind of still participate with that kind of stuff at school. How was online school for you? How did that go?
It was okay. It's definitely not how I wanted to end my 8th grade year, but it was definitely a new experience, and there were highs to it. It was nice that we still have stuff like Zoom and Google Meet, so I can still see my teachers and classmates, but it definitely wasn't as fun as being in person.
How did you how did you do that, like with any friends? I mean, obviously, and again, as a mom, I know I saw my kids going through this too. How did you kind of handle it where, okay, I can't see my friends in person. Did you do stuff like outside of class or try to through email or whatever?
I did FaceTime my friends a little bit. I have seen them a couple times, socially distanced and with masks on. Unfortunately, those were only for a short amount of time, but it's still nice to see them compared to being stuck at home all day and only being able to see them through the screen.
Well, and so speaking of being stuck at home all day, which I think we're all in that same bucket, right? Because I'm sure all of us families, we love each other, but we're like always around each other. And I think it was really interesting, and I'll just give you why we're talking today is because, you're kind of looking at every other digital way. How can I stay connected with people? So you and your mom and myself are connected on social, and she started posting these like pictures of these fantastical creations of baking, and the kind of thing you'd see like, oh my gosh, I need to eat that right now. And so she's showing these on social, and she's saying that you were creating them, which just blew my mind, because granted, I can bake a little bit, but these were like fantastical, and I just want to stick with that word. Did you turn to baking like during this whole lockdown thing, or had you always been a baker?
I do have to jump in just to correct something. She wasn't able to bake for a while because we couldn't get any flour.
Oh.
So that was an issue. So we eventually found a 25-pound bag at Costco. And I was like, let's do it because this search is killing me. So we got that. And then she actually did quite a bit of baking in a short period of time. It was lots of breads. I'll let you talk about that. But you actually did. I think you've just already forgotten. There's no such thing as time anymore.
No.
Blended together at this point.
25 pounds of flour.
Yes.
So that comes home from Costco, where you're just like, all right, let's do this.
Yep, we were definitely on the search for flour, and we saw it there, and it was at a good price too. And my mom was just trying to decide whether to get it or not, and she was like, you know what? You're gonna do a lot of baking, so I might as well get it for you. And I've been using it a lot now.
So cool.
I've always been interested in baking. I've always tried baking. Obviously this period of time has given me a chance to expand my horizons and try new things. So I definitely have become more of an experienced baker, and I've gotten into more breads and more complex things like that. But no, I've been doing this for a while, and I've really enjoyed it.
What's the first thing you remember ever baking?
Oh my gosh. Well, when I started baking, I used to bake with my mom all the time. So I'm guessing probably chocolate chip cookies, just because those were like a super simple thing. My mom probably didn't even let me fully do it by myself at the time, but I could still help her in terms of measuring and mixing. But I actually personally don't remember, just because it was
long time ago.
Long ago, yes.
That's really, I feel like that most people, that might be the first thing they did, because you got the Toll House tube of like of cookie dough. This, by the way, this podcast is not brought to you in any way by Toll House cookies, but it's what I remember, right? Where it's got like and they always put the recipe on it, and then you just kind of bleh, bleh. But you're talking like from scratch making chocolate chip cookies.
Yes, my mom has a chocolate chip cookie recipe that she always claims is the best chocolate chip cookie recipe. Now, granted, it is good, but I haven't tried any others, so I don't know how it does compared to them.
Well, we might, like, if you guys aren't proprietary about it, maybe we can like share that recipe with when we put this on like the website and refer people to it in the podcast, because I'm sure people are, I think we've heard of the cookie recipe that's out there right now. It's like chocolate chunked shortbread cookies or something, which sound amazing, rightfully so. But I have a feeling that based on what I've seen, you're not the only one that's been baking, and not just during COVID-19, but I think everybody's looking for new stuff to dabble in, right? Did you, what did you dabble into? Like, what kind of stuff did you start trying while you were, we're in this lockdown and let me just start baking a lot?
I actually haven't really been trying too many things. I've been working more at other extracurricular activities. So, for example, I also sew and paint and draw. So I've been definitely getting into those more. I actually just finished sewing a top right before we got into this, but I've just had much more time, so I've been able to dive more into those activities and get more experience with them.
So what have you baked? So, whatever, I remember seeing a bread braid, which again was like, what? She did a bread braid. What have you been baking?
Oh gosh, I've been baking a lot. I have made apple bread. I was trying. I love banana bread, which I've also made, and we had some apples that we needed to use up, so I decided to try it. I have made apple cinnamon buns, mint chocolate chip cookies, a French lemon yogurt cake. I've tried the sweet Irish soda bread with raisins inside of it. if you don't like raisins, you're still probably going to like the bread because it just adds a nice little sweetness to it, and you can barely taste it actually in the bread. I have made French baguettes. They actually turned out a little bit bigger than baguettes, but they were still French baguettes and they tasted pretty good. I've made homemade pizza with homemade crust. I made a plain one and ham, ham and cheese one too. I had pretzels. My dad has a homemade pretzel recipe that we used to make all the time when we were younger, so I've definitely tried that again. And I have made a variety of cakes. I make a couple box cakes, and I decorate them with homemade frosting and all that. But I've also made chocolate cakes. Actually, my birthday was recently, so my birthday cake, I made myself a chocolate cake with chocolate buttercream.
Well, happy birthday. That's awesome. I love that you baked your own cake for your birthday.
Yeah.
Probably your mom's like, yeah, go for it. I mean, it's going to be the best cake we have in the house.
It's the only cake we had in the house at the time, but actually we've had multiple cakes in the house over the past 2-3 weeks. Mm-hmm. So my family's been eating a lot of cake recently.
Yes, we have.
They're putting on the COVID-19, if you know what I'm saying.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Well, I have to say too, like I would see these and I was really thankful you guys don't live anywhere near me, because I would be wanting you to be like, oh, can she make me like a batch, and I'll come get it. We could have a safe exchange. It's all good. Have you been able to, and again, I know, with all the restrictions and stuff, but have you been able to, has your family been having to eat all of this stuff, or you've been able to offload it to anybody else?
We want to be careful, sharing food just in case, because we definitely don't want to distribute it to other people.
Right.
The only time that I have actually given away food is my grandfather. I made him the sweet Irish soda bread for his birthday. So we safely dropped that off at his house. He let it sit for a little bit just because
Sure.
Since it was a bread product, it was in a sealed plastic bag, so it could sit for a little bit. But that has been the only time that I've actually shared my food with anybody else.
Do you foresee maybe doing more of that, like once things get safer, and I guess I'm kind of asking, are you planning on baking more in the future? Like keep honing that skill and brain. I mean, I really literally could see you being on the Great British Baking Show. I know you're not British, at least from what I can tell, but something like that where you're like, and not even just as a child, but being on, because this is amazing. I just feel like you've really stepped into something cool and honed a hobby and a skill that a lot of kids probably can't really share. Do you plan to bake more in the future, do you think?
Yes, I definitely plan on doing it. I mean, obviously, I won't be able to do it as much, especially, once hopefully we're back in school regularly. That will be, my time to bake will definitely be significantly cut down. But I do hope to bake more, and I do hope that once things get safer, I can share my bakes with more people.
Unposit is sponsored in part by Helix. Everyone loves WordPress until they don't. Every WordPress host has servers and fiber optic cables and customer support. But when WordPress gets wonky on you, and it will, do you want to be one of 500,000 customers asking for help at the same time on a Tuesday? No. Wouldn't it be better to talk to the actual people who built that hosting company, wrote the code, and know you as well as they know the technical stuff? That's Helix. All the world-class, super amazing WordPress hosting stuff that makes your life easy, delivered by a small team of actual human beings that really want to get to know you. Unposit loves Helix because the second we have a question or an issue, getting help is instant. We aren't stuck in some eternal ticket system with someone we don't know. And more to the point, someone who doesn't know us. And we're a bit on the unique side. If you want a WordPress hosting team to know you and know your website, say hello to the Helix managed WordPress hosting system at iamhelix.com/unposit. That's IAMHELIX.com/unposit. Okay, back to the show. What is your favorite thing to bake? Sounds like you tried a bunch of different stuff. What was the thing you just this was so awesome, and whether it tasted awesome or not, it was just a fun experience. What was your favorite?
I think my favorite are probably cookies, the mint chocolate chip cookies, especially because mint chocolate chip is one of my favorite flavors.
Mhm.
So going into that, I was just really excited because I love chocolate chip cookies. Nothing can beat a nice warm chocolate chip cookie. And going into it, I was just super excited. And the recipe is pretty straightforward.
Mhm.
So, and then afterwards, they turned out amazing. They were everything I wanted in a cookie. And my family really enjoyed it too. Cookies are one of those things that everybody in my family can enjoy. And it was just a lot of fun to make.
Well, I will say, once we get to where it is safe to distribute your baking, I think I will be requesting those mint chocolate chip cookies. If and ship them my way. I don't care if they break apart because, right, all that matters is how they taste. But that sounds amazing. I'm sure a lot of people who are going to be listening to this podcast, or even seeing it on video, or reading the website and stuff, are going to be like, that sounds really good. Like all the things you mentioned just sound delicious. Which do you think there's one that you improved your skill the most on? Like you feel like maybe it was the most challenging, but once you did it, you're like, oh, I made it. I improved. That was awesome.
Well, I do feel like the chocolate cake that I made for my birthday, I did make twice. So that was the second time I made the cake. And I definitely tasted a difference in the second one. I mean, I followed the same recipe. I personally don't think I did anything different, but it definitely tasted better. And I was able to frost the cake better just because I, practiced frosting cakes. So I think in the end, just the repetition of making it again, something just clicked and I was able to get a better product than the first time.
The pretzels also. You had a much better second go round with the pretzels, remember?
Oh, yes, because I messed them up the first time.
Well, but that's how you learn.
That is how you learn. So,
yes.
So pretzels was a learning experience.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I will say no more.
Yes, they were challenging. End of story.
So the first time I made them, I actually wanted to make them for Mother's Day because we had the idea of creating pretzel roll buns and putting like grilled burgers with them.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it was my first time making them alone. And my dad wrote down the recipe and it's vague because he knows it himself. So reading it as somebody who doesn't know it, it was definitely a little challenging. The part that I got mixed up on is you're supposed to use like the tiniest amount of rinse water to sort of wash around the edge. And I used too much water, which means the buns were supposed to be poofy, but they sort of went splat.
Oh, no.
They still tasted great, but they definitely weren't.
They weren't picturesque.
They're safe enough, yes. So I tried to make them again. I didn't make pretzel buns that time, but I definitely will have to make pretzel buns in the future. But we made the classic pretzel shape as well as pretzel twists, and they definitely turned out much better because my dad helped supervise, so he helped show me the proper way to do it.
I love that you bring that up. So in our house, I do not cook. I do bake a little, but not as much, like not to the extent you have. My husband's the cook, and he has a recipe for making his grandfather's pancakes. And I mean, if I look at it, I basically see a list of ingredients, and that's all I see. I'm like, I don't know what to do. Because, right, it's just a vague recipe. But that person, his grandfather knew it. That's all he needed. He wrote down what he had refined and what worked. But now that got handed down to people to just interpret whatever they want. So it feels like that's a big part of being a cook or a baker, where sometimes you are given very little, but you must make much of it.
Yes.
I was going to ask you too. So it sounds like, you've gotten your chocolate chip cookie recipe from your mom and you got some pretzel recipes from your dad. Do you tend to just use family recipes, or did you kind of branch out and get some recipes from elsewhere?
No, I actually don't use that many family recipes. To the extent I don't know too many of them, we really don't have that much of a record, or my dad's recipes are mostly cooking, so it's not necessarily baking in a sense. Mm-hmm. But I do get a lot of inspiration off of different websites. So for example, the Great British Baking Show, I do watch the show, and they have a website listing all the bakes that all the bakers have made. So sometimes I'll watch the show, see and be like, oh, that sounds really interesting. I would want to try to make it. So then I look on the website and I find the recipe.
That's cool. Now, so here's a question. We talked about vague recipes, and I know on that show they do the one where like they barely give any direction, and they just I don't know how these people do it either. I don't get it. Where I mean, they read the directions out loud, and I'm like, if I got that, I wouldn't know what to do, and then they just kind of go into action and make it happen. Do they give a better spelled out recipe on those ones on that website, or do they just give you whatever the recipe was given on the show?
They definitely give you the whole entire recipe step by step. So, for example, I pulled a naan bread, one of those challenges, and I had the full list. I understood everything, and it actually turned out pretty good. And they weren't simplified as much as you see on the show.
They weren't lacking in detail. You had the detail you needed.
Yes.
Yeah, because I always think of it's Paul, and I can't remember the name of the lady who's the newest one on the show.
Peru.
Thank you, Peru. Yeah, because they always they cover everything with that red and white check cloth, and so everything's a mystery, and then they turn the page over, and that's all they got. That's pretty impressive, though, too, that you're going and seeking it out, and you're seeing what people are creating on a show, like on a reality show that's highly produced, and it's a big competition, and they're very hard challenges. It's just really cool that you're trying them, and I love that you're just like, shoot, I got a 25-pound bag of flour. I got to do something. How much of the 25 pound is left, out of curiosity?
Like 24 pounds. Want some?
Well, I think there's more than that. I definitely have been using it, and I can sort of throw extra flour around just because I do have the ability. So I can, use extra flour to grease pans so cakes don't stick inside, or use it to flour my surface area. So I can use it a little bit more. There probably is less than 24 pounds. Thank you, Mom. But I definitely have used it. I haven't used all of it, probably not even halfway through, but I have used more than 1 pound.
Nice. That's a lot. I mean, well, and you got a whole summer ahead of you with, things uncertain, not sure how quickly or how rapidly people are going to be heading back into the fray of public anything. But sounds, and of course it's summer, so baking means ovens being on. So is your family prepared for you to keep baking and maybe making the house a little warmer than it needs to be in the summer?
Well, I think at this point my family is tired of the baking in terms of having leftovers. They do enjoy eating it, but definitely me being in the kitchen and sort of getting in the way sometimes. Definitely, they probably won't miss that when I stop baking for a period of time. But I think that they enjoy it. They enjoy seeing how I grow and how I can improve. That's okay. And I think, and obviously they enjoy eating what I make, so I don't think it'll be that much of an issue.
Well, so let's think about this too. So there might be some other kids of varying ages that would like, oh my God, I want to get into baking. That sounds way fun. What would you recommend to like a kid your age or younger if they want to start trying baking? I mean, what would you say that they are your best advice for them?
I would just say start simple, because when you start, you see these elaborate cakes and you're like, oh my gosh, I want to make that. But you do have to work your way up there. And like everything, practice makes perfect. But another really important part is to just have fun, because if you're not having fun with it, you won't produce your best work. So you want to make sure that you pick, when you start, you want to pick simple recipes that you'll have fun doing, and that you'll like the outcomes, because that is when you'll work the best and you'll get the best results.
All right, so a little extra on this question. What would you recommend to any parents out there who might be trying to help their young child get into baking? What's your advice for them so that they do have fun with the process and want to keep doing it?
Oh, wow. It's a little tricky because everybody obviously has different things that they're fond of. So one person's idea of fun might not be the other person's. But for a parent, I know when I started out, my mom used to always lead the baking, and I would start by helping with filling up the measuring cups or mixing it in. So for the first couple times, parents should show the kids how to do it. Obviously let them help, but they do most of the actual work, and the kids are just sort of helping a little bit along the way while also watching the process. And then as they get that process down, they can start doing it themselves. And eventually the parents won't have to watch them as much because the kids will have it. But definitely just make sure one of the things that I do to make sure I have fun is, one, make sure that I'm baking something that I know I'll actually eat and like, and two, listen to music, because sometimes you get so stressed out with your baking because you're like, oh, it should look like this, but it looks like this instead. And music just sort of calms you down, gets you into the spirit. You're sort of like, oh, I'm ready to do this. I'm ready to take the songs. The music is giving me the energy to do it, and just trust the process. Because as I said, sometimes it might not look right away, but it will turn out if you follow the directions. And obviously, once in a while you're going to get those bad recipes that don't turn out as they're supposed to. But most recipes out there are good, and you just got to trust the process.
Nice. I love that. That's really good advice for both the young people and their parents, right? Because you don't want people to get frustrated, and this could turn into something like an amazing skill. I would imagine you could use this in the future too. I mean, just knowing all that, I mean, there are adults you could definitely advise at this point about, baking and that skill and how to do things right. So I think it's so impressive that you did this. One last thing I'm going to ask, if you had a dream tool or baking implement, something that could help your baking, is there anything you're lacking that you're like, oh God, I wish I had this so I could try this with baking?
See, I don't think so. I don't think that there are specific equipment that I need. It's more of ingredients, because some recipes you look into and they have these crazy ingredients, and you're like, I really want to make this, but these ingredients are impossible. Where the heck am I going to find these ingredients? So I think most of the time it's just making sure that you have the ingredients and having the proper ingredients. So if I was just kind of able to, snap my fingers and have ingredients, that would be much easier for me, and I can definitely do much more.
You make me laugh saying that too, because I can't tell you how many times I've gotten ready to do the holiday baking for every year that I do it. And I'm like, in my brain, I'm like, yeah, I got that. Yeah, I got that. It's fine. And then I start and I realize I am short on something. And oh man, if I could just snap my fingers at that point and be like, yes, great. Now I've got a new can of cinnamon. That's awesome. Instead of, well, pause everything. Let me go to the store and get what I need. But I think that's really, that brings up a good point too, to always be prepared and make sure you've got everything you're going to need for that particular bake versus not having everything. Is there any baker or any favorite baker or baking site that you really like?
As I said, I do follow the Great British Baking Show. It's one of my favorite shows. It is just a great show. I really enjoy watching it. And as I said, the website for that show does have some good recipes. I mean, not all of them, just because these are very professional bakers, so they do have complex recipes. So not all of them are the easiest to do, and their recipes usually include more common ingredients in Britain than actually here. So for example, they use a lot of self-rising flour instead of regular flour in their products. So if you don't have self-rising flour, you can't make half of the recipes on there. But I do like to go on their website for inspiration.
Who knows? I mean, maybe someday you'll be on a baking show too, British or otherwise. Thank you for sharing all this experience with us. Because like I said, I don't think it's every day I see, a middle schooler who's like rolling out literally that level of baking goods and end results. So I was really impressed, and I'm sure everyone listening will be too. So congrats on this. It's a big achievement for you.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for having me too.
Thanks for listening to our interview with Elizabeth. If you're now itching to scope out your own baking ingredients and give at least one of her recipes a try, we have that on our website at unposit.com. If you'd like to watch the video interview we recorded, that's on our YouTube channel. You can find that at bit.ly/unposityoutube, all lowercase. If you liked this episode, we're planning more of them. We'd like to start including more voices and perspectives on this show. As I mentioned, our Unposit kids are starting to change course a little bit, but more than that, we want to make sure this show is for everyone. Everyone who's a geek, a nerd, a gamer, a family member, or just someone looking to be entertained by cool stuff. If you're interested in being a guest or in having your cool or nerdy kid be a guest on Unposit on an upcoming episode, email contact@unposit.com and tell us why you have a killer topic or guest for the show. And look, even if it's something like, say, baking, it gets way more interesting when we learn the story and experience around it. You're interesting enough to be on Unposit. Oh, and even if you don't want to be on the show, you still can help us by subscribing to the podcast, and even better, review us on whatever podcast app you're using. It really helps people find the show, and it can help us bring you more shows in the future. Thanks for listening, and have fun unpausing it. Later.